Buffy Saint-Marie, Narcissist, Part 4. We are continuing the analysis of the Canadian icon, Buffy Saint-Marie, to determine whether she's a narcissist or something else. We're making our way through the CBC investigation at the moment. Sainte-Marie rose to fame in the early 1960s. She launched her career alongside folk artists like Bob Dylan, Leonard Cohen and Joni Mitchell. Her songs were covered by Elvis, Barbra Streisand and Glenn Campbell, to name a few. A New York Times article from 1963 described Sainte-Marie as an Indian girl who was one of the most promising new talents on the folk scene today. The following year, she was named Billboard magazine's Best New Artist of the Year. The Brantford Expositor quoted her as saying, "My main aim is someday to be the world's best Indian girl singer." She is considered the first Indigenous person to win an Oscar, which she was awarded in 1983 for co-writing Up Where We Belong for the movie An Officer and a Gentleman. She is also the recipient of numerous Indigenous music awards, including 4 Canadian Aboriginal Musical Awards, 2 Aboriginal People's Choice Music Awards, 4 Junos designated for Indigenous people, and 4 Indigenous Lifetime Achievement Awards. Accordingly, that is a significant benefit that has been accrued as a consequence of her purported Indigenous ancestry. Sainte-Marie has been named a Companion of the Order of Canada, the country's highest civilian honour. In addition, her website says she's been awarded honorary doctorates from at least a dozen universities. Recently, there has been a resurgence of interest in Sainte-Marie. In 2021, she appeared on a Canadian stamp. Last year, she was the subject of a travelling exhibit featured at Ottawa's National Arts Centre. She was also the focus of a 5-part CBC podcast about her life and legacy, and a 1-hour concert televised on CBC that celebrated her leadership in Indigenous music. Also in 2022, American broadcaster PBS and Canadian streaming service Crave aired Buffy Saint-Marie, Carry It On, a documentary examining her influence as a champion for Indigenous people in their rights. It is the only Canadian production to have been nominated for a 2023 International Emmy. Earlier this year, Sainte-Marie announced that she was retiring from public performances because of health concerns, including arthritic hands and a recent shoulder injury. A simple Google search shows that virtually every available source says Sainte-Marie was born on the Piapot First Nation in Saskatchewan. But that was contradicted late last year when a tipster provided CBC with a copy of what appeared to be Sainte-Marie's birth certificate obtained from a small town hall in Massachusetts. That record said Beverly Jean Santamaria, who started going by the name Buffy Saint-Marie early in her music career, was born in 1941 in Stoneham, Massachusetts, north of Boston, to Albert and Winifred Santamaria. The couple, Sainte-Marie, claimed that had adopted her. Mother, father, and baby were all listed as white. Sainte-Marie's story fits an all too familiar pattern, says Métis lawyer Jean Tellet of Vancouver. She says that for decades, non-Indigenous people have been falsely claiming Indigenous ancestry and using those claims to take opportunities and honours for themselves that were created for genuine First Nations, Métis and Inuit people. Now, doing such a thing, making a false claim of that nature, does not of itself mean that a person is a narcissist, but what it does show is a sense of entitlement to claim that you are something when you are not. It also shows an absence of emotional empathy, because in effect you're taking opportunities that should belong to others, and possibly meaning that they can't then have them. It also demonstrates that you're failing to be accountable for your behaviour in taking something that doesn't belong to you, and you're failing to recognise a boundary. The lawyer points to high-profile examples such as author Joseph Boyden, former Judge Mary Ellen Tupel-Lafond, and Professor Carrie Bourassa. They've all become stars in their field, said Telle, who in 2022 completed a comprehensive study called Indigenous Identity Fraud for the University of Saskatchewan. They're taking that opportunity from a real Indigenous person, its prestige, its money, its grants and awards and positions and work that they would never have gotten otherwise, she said. Thus, that could well be viewed as character trait acquisition, along with the acquiring of residual benefits, namely prestige, awards, money. Given the doubt cast upon her ancestry by the birth certificate, CBC decided to investigate Sainte-Marie's ancestry claims. That review, examining genealogical records and media stories, along with interviews with some members of her family, confirmed the facts presented in Sainte-Marie's birth certificate. It also uncovered a letter that some family members believe showed the lengths to which Sainte-Marie would go to silence those questioning her story. Heidi Sainte-Marie remembers the moment her father, Sainte-Marie's older brother, received a threatening letter from his sister and her high-powered Los Angeles attorney. "It blew up my whole world," Sainte-Marie told CBC. The birth certificate is clear. It shows that she is described as white, although, of course, to look at her, you would not necessarily think that. However, might it be the case, of course, that she has used some kind of cosmetic adjustments to make herself look more indigenous? That may or may not be the case. What is clear is that her backstory is that she was born in Canada. She wasn't. She was born in the United States. She claims that her biological parents soon died. They didn't. She claimed that she was adopted by a white couple. That was not the case. And therefore, it would call into question this. She maintained that she had been told by her mother that she was adopted. Yet that was simply not the case. Why would her biological mother, who still looked after her, tell her that in actual fact she was adopted? Now, it might be the case that her mother had some problems and difficulties and said such a thing in order to cause the child to perhaps have issues with regard to their own self-worth, or perhaps to confer some kind of hero status on the mother by saying, "Oh, your real mother, you lost her, but we came to your rescue, aren't we wonderful?" It's a possibility, and one keeps an open mind in that regard. But on the balance of probabilities, it does seem rather extraordinary to do such a thing when you are the actual mother of the child. Why invent such a story? Of course, what would be gained from doing so? Well, as I mentioned, possibly some kind of hero status. But what about the case of Buffy? If she were to invent such a story whereby she claims that she's got indigenous status when she hasn't, she can then utilize the acquisition of that indigenous status to tremendous effect, as she has demonstrated throughout her career and life. Quite simply, it doesn't stack up to suggest that her mother, her real mother, who was looking after her, would say to her, "By the way, you're adopted." And therefore, that would appear to be an actual lie issued by Buffy Saint-Marie with regard to her ancestry, demonstrating that she knew that she was actually from the United States and not Canada, that she knew that her parents did not die at an early age, and that she knew that the people that brought her up were her actual biological parents, and that she had not been adopted. And therefore, she had engaged in several lies and the revision of history. Sainte-Marie was raised by Albert and Winifred Santa-Maria in the town of Wakefield, Massachusetts, along with her elder brother Alan and a younger sister Lainey. Albert's parents were born in Italy, while Winifred's mother and father were of mostly English ancestry. The family changed its name from Santa Maria to Sainte Marie because of anti-Italian prejudice that developed during the Second World War, according to a 2012 biography, Buffy Saint-Marie, It's My Way, written by Blair Stonechild. Mentions of her in the local newspaper show that from an early age, Sainte-Marie was active in the arts, performing in dance and piano recitals and choirs. Buffy Saint-Marie, an authorised biography written by CBC Music associate producer Andrea Warner in collaboration with Sainte-Marie in 2018, outlines a variety of stories Sainte-Marie says she heard as a child. She didn't know who she was or where she came from, the biography says. I was told that I was adopted. I was told that I was just born on the wrong side of the blanket. In other words, one of my parents was my parent and one wasn't. I was told that we were part Indian, but nobody knew anything about it, she's quoted as saying. In the biography, she goes on to suggest that sort of uncertainty is common among indigenous people. So many of us were either taken away to residential schools or some other school, or we were adopted out, or we got lost in the system, or we were otherwise bleached, she said. Sainte-Marie's 2012 biography suggests she was put up for adoption after her biological mother died shortly after giving birth to her near the Piapot First Nation. The Britannica website says her Cree mum was killed in a car accident. In 2022, PBS reported that she was taken from her family against their will as a result of the cruel and racist practice in Canada known as the 60s scoop. This is a claim Sainte-Marie also made in a 2018 interview with National Public Radio in the United States when she was asked to describe her own adoption. In Canada, we had something that, sometimes a little bit later, referred to as the Big Scoop, where native children were removed from the home, she said. They're assigned a birthday, they're assigned a kind of biography, so in many cases adoptive people don't really know what the true story is. The 60s scoop is widely recognised to have started in 1951. Sainte-Marie was born in 1941. A further discrepancy which suggests that she couldn't have been involved in the Big Scoop by some margin. While Sainte-Marie has claimed she's Cree, born on the Piapot First Nation, CBC hasn't found any reference where she has directly identified her biological parents. In a report in the Ottawa Citizen in 1966, she was quoted as saying, "My real mother wasn't in a position to keep me, but I always knew who she was and that I could go back to the place of my birth when I wished." Yet the very next year, the Montreal Gazette quoted her as saying, "I don't know who my real mother was." Tellett finds this shifting narrative suspicious. While it's not uncommon for people to get some facts about their early life confused, Tellett said the whole story is not usually completely inconsistent, like, I knew my parents, I never knew my parents. That's two things that can't live together. This shifting of the stories suggests quite possibly that in the instant when she's asked a question about her childhood, she just gives an answer in that moment, which is done for the purposes of satisfying the query in that moment, irrespective of whether it's consistent with what she had said in the past. And the reason being is that for whatever reason, she is not conveying the truth of her childhood, namely, she was born in Massachusetts to parents who were nothing to do with Indian ancestry, and therefore she has created a narrative of having been born of this Indian ancestry, and therefore, so long as she makes mention of that, she is inconsistent as to the actual details of what happened in and around her birth and who her parents were. In a phone conversation in September with Sainte-Marie's younger sister, Lainey, aged 75, CBC asked if she recalled her parents ever suggesting that her sister was adopted. She said no, adding that the first time she heard that claim was when Sainte-Marie was in her early 20s. CBC has found no indication that either Albert or Winifred Sainte-Marie, her parents, who are both deceased, ever publicly commented on Sainte-Marie's ancestry claims. Thus, inconsistencies are appearing. It looks to be the case that she has invented the suggestion that she was born in Canada and that she was born of the Piapot First Nation. That she has invented a tale about her biological parents dying and that she was adopted. And thereafter, when asked about details about her childhood, she's inconsistent with the provision of those details. We're going to continue with more about the investigation in part 5. Join me there.